the original Nissan Juke. It was a car that sold like toilet roll circa March 2020, but to be honest, I can't understand why. Yes, I know it was a trendsetter for the small SUV crossover class, but when you boil it down objectively, it was a car that didn't really make a lot of sense. For starters, it had looks that even a mother would struggle to love. It had a cramped rear, a small boot, and from what I've heard, it wasn't particularly good to drive either, yet it sold by the bucket load. Anyway, roll the clock 10 years forward and it has been replaced by this, the brand new second generation Juke. It's more spacious than before, more practical, more premium, and the looks are far less offensive. So this must be a sure thing, right? Now, as much as the exterior is an interesting topic of discussion, I actually want to do things a little bit differently and kick off with rear space. I know, what a maverick. Anyway, this was an area of complaint for the last car as it was quite cramped in the rear, but thankfully Nissan has made improvements for the new model. As always, the driver's seat has been set for me. I'm 6'2", so I am of course a taller chap. And for me, the space back here is so-so. It is a mixed bag. Now, knee room isn't too bad and the leg room is pretty agreeable. I've got no real complaints there, but headroom, oh dear, yes, that is a little bit tight. My hair is rubbing on the roof lining. So if you are a taller person, you may not want to sit in the back of this car for a longer journey. It's also worth noting that this car does have black roof lining, so the rear can feel just a little bit dingy. Could you fit 3 adults in the rear? No, I don't think you could. It would be too much of a squeeze, but I'm not going to complain about that because that is quite common for this class of vehicle and for the size dimension. So that is more of an observation as opposed to a complaint. However, if you're more concerned about carrying children in the back, then there are of course ISOFIX points if you want or need them. In regard to practicality, there is a bit of it back here. So I've got door bins either side, so I've got my bottle in there with a bit of space left over. There's a cubby hole in the middle where you can pop 1 or 2 smaller items, a USB port where your rear passengers can charge their smartphone or their tablet on the move, map pockets, and a hook where you can hang up an item of clothing. So overall, the back of the Juke isn't a bad place to be, but I think it may be a little bit cramped for taller passengers. Anyway, let's move on to the boot, which has also been improved. Open up the tailgate and you'll be greeted by 422 litres worth of space, which is more than the last model, of course, that offered 354. You also get a height adjustable floor as standard, so you can choose to have a deeper boot with a higher load lip, of course, or a shallower boot with less of a load lip. If you want more space, you can, of course, fold down the 60/40 rear seats to give you 1,305 litres. It is worth noting that whilst this boot is bigger, it isn't the largest in its class, but I'm sure you'll agree the space is pretty respectable and pretty usable. The Nissan Juke has got off to a decent start, but how does it drive? Well, for starters, if you're looking for a wide choice of engines, then I'm afraid you're going to be as disappointed as a vegan that's been taken to a steakhouse, because there is a choice of just one. Yes, one engine. It is a 1 litre 3-cylinder turbocharged petrol, which offers 117 horsepower along with 200 Newton meters of torque. If you prefer that in pound-feet, then there is a subtitle below. There may only be a choice of one engine, but there is a choice of gearboxes. You can either have a 6-speed manual or a 7-speed dual-clutch automatic. Now, I will get onto the gearbox in a few moments. I have the 6-speed manual, by the way, but back onto the engine. Now, I'm sure you're not really fussed about the performance, but in case you are, this car will hit 62 miles per hour in 10.4 seconds, and the top speed is 112 miles per hour. I'm sure you're more concerned about the fuel economy. That is 46.5 on a combined run. Those are the official figures from Nissan. I've been getting low 40s in my experience, and this car emits 118 grams per kilometre. Yes, so the engine itself, it feels quite nippy, it feels quite responsive. The power starts to come in from about 2,000 revs or so, and then it pretty much dies off once you approach 5,000. So once you get past 5,000 RPM, it doesn't really produce anything apart from noise. Not to say that this engine is particularly unrefined or coarse, because for the most part this engine is just fine. Once you get up to cruising speeds, you can't really hear it, in all honesty. What you will hear though is the road noise. Now, this car has got 19-inch alloys as standard, and if I shut up for a few moments, yes, there is quite a lot of tyre noise coming into the cabin, as well as wind noise. So if you're looking for a small SUV that offers a good level of refinement, then you may want to look elsewhere, because the Juke is lacking somewhat in that area. But the engine, it feels strong enough. It's absolutely fine for driving around town, and even when you drive on faster roads like this, I wouldn't say it feels particularly caught out. Yes, you will need to change down 1 or 2 gears when you're going uphill, and I think if the car was fully laden, then it may feel a little underpowered, but for the most part, I have no complaints with this engine. There won't be a diesel engine coming, but there will be more engines on the way, and quite possibly a hybrid as well. Power is fed to the front wheels. If you are looking for a four-wheel drive Juke, then, well, you're going to be waiting quite some time, because there are no plans for Nissan to build one anytime soon. But to be fair, for this kind of car, even if there was a four-wheel drive option, the majority of these cars would be bought front-wheel drive anyway. On to the gear change. Yes, the gear change. For the most part, it is okay. I wouldn't say it's particularly amazing, but at the same time, I wouldn't say it's particularly woeful. The weight of the change is quite nice, it's quite pleasing. Although what I will say is the change from first gear into second gear, as I will demonstrate now, does feel a bit crunchy, and the change into sixth doesn't feel particularly amazing either. Now the ride is a bit of an interesting one, because it is a bit of a mixed bag. There is a low speed firmness, but to be honest with you, I've experienced that with pretty much every Nissan I've driven. But once you build up speed like I have now, the ride is surprisingly supple, more supple than I was expecting. There is a downside though, and that is no matter what speed you're going at, there's a choppiness to the ride. There is a certain amount of unsettledness. I think I've just made that word up, but you get what I mean. The ride is busy, it never feels composed, and yes, I would definitely say choppy is a good way to describe it. It feels almost boat-like. My wife was a passenger in the car the other day, and she can get car sick a little times, and she actually said, "Oh, Aaron, actually I feel more seasick than I do car sick." But if she had been sick in the car, do you know what it would have been called? It would have been called in Nissan puke. Yeah, moving on. Anyway, back onto the ride. The ride is okay. I wouldn't call it uncomfortable. It's just unsettled. So this isn't really a relaxed way of driving, in my opinion. On the plus side, the seats are comfortable. They offer a decent amount of support, but again, I'm afraid I do have a negative aspect on that. The leather is very nice, it feels very premium, very plush, but it's quite smooth, so when you're going through the corners in a more enthusiastic manner, you will find your body slides about a bit. And I think Nissan would have been better off putting a small strip of alcantara down the middle to help grip you in the seat, whereas as it is, when you're going through the corners, okay, these corners aren't particularly tight, so I can't really demonstrate that well, but as you can hopefully see, my torso is not staying in one place. I would like a bit more bolstering for my thighs on my hips as well. So this is a tighter corner, so right on the brakes, turn it in. Ah! I'm almost out of the car. Ah! I think I was closer to getting in that Volkswagen camper van than I was sat in this car. Okay, I'm exaggerating a little bit, but my point is, the seats are a little bit slippery. Now onto the handling. The handling of the Juke is perfectly competent. I've got no real complaints. There's a good amount of grip on offer. The steering is actually pretty adequate. One thing I haven't mentioned up until this point is there is a choice of 3 driving modes. You have Eco, Standard or Sport. Put it into Sport, as I do now, if I can find the button. Where is it? It's down here. And the steering becomes heavier. Yes, okay, the weight is a little bit artificial, but I don't mind that too much. And of course, you get a more responsive throttle. And although the car definitely feels perkier and it feels more alive, I wouldn't say it feels particularly exciting. I'm sorry, Nissan, I know it sounds really harsh, but I do need to be honest here. Right, let's turn around. And let's give it some. Into third. Yeah, the engine offers a decent amount of performance. I doubt many buyers or drivers will feel the need to have more, particularly given the type of car this is. But yes, back onto the handling. The body roll is pretty well controlled. The steering is pretty decent. Brakes perform pretty well as well. But if I'm honest, I don't really get a great deal of satisfaction threading this through the corners. And I know this is not a hot hatch, or it's not really designed to offer the highest amount of driving pleasure, but that's not to say that these kind of cars have to be boring and humdrum and just a little bit vanilla. It's a funny one because the Juke is pretty capable through the corners, yet at the same time it doesn't really tickle my pickle. Ugh, 6th gear. Ugh. In case you're wondering, the model on test in this video is the Tekna Plus, which is towards the top of the range. The starting price is £24,360, offering standard features such as LED lights, 19-inch alloys, keyless entry, leather and alcantara interior, heated front seats, climate control, 8-inch touchscreen, DAB radio, Bluetooth, smartphone connectivity, navigation, 8-speaker BOSE sound system, front and rear parking sensors, reversing camera and a round view monitor. There's also a healthy amount of safety features, including 6 airbags, autonomous emergency braking, lane departure warning, lane keep assist, hill start assist, adaptive cruise control, blind spot monitoring, rear cross traffic alert and traffic sign recognition. It's little wonder then that the Juke was awarded 5 stars by Euro NCAP. Earlier I spoke about the rear of the cabin but not the front, and I think it would be a crime not to address this area because I think Nissan has done really well. It feels much more upmarket and premium than I was expecting, to be honest, and when you first step in you do think, hang on, this is a Nissan Juke, isn't it? There's plenty of alcantara on the dashboard, the door cards, the centre console, the centre armrest, and also the seats. The seats themselves are also trimmed with leather, and you have a leather steering wheel. You also have glossy black plastics which look quite pleasing. Okay, they will get a bit streaky when you wipe them and they will attract fingerprints and dust, but when they're clean it is quite pleasing to look at. And you also get faux carbon fibre, which normally I'm not a fan of because I think most of the time it looks cheap, but I don't know, Nissan have managed to pull it off. It actually looks pretty agreeable. I think it's because it's more of a satin finish as opposed to a gloss, but yeah, even the faux carbon looks pretty good. So overall this is a nice place to be. Also, this will be more comfortable for drivers because this car, as opposed to the last Nissan Juke, has a steering wheel that not only adjusts for rake but adjusts for reach as well. Therefore it'll be easier to get a comfortable driving setup. The driver's seat also has a good level of adjustment as well, so I'm sure you'll be able to get a comfortable driving setup quite quickly. In regard to practicality, it's okay in here. I wouldn't say there's anything particularly innovative about the storage solutions, but it's not too bad. Should be absolutely fine for everyday family use. The door bins are of a decent enough size. I can fit in my bottle with no complaints, and I've got a bit of space left over. There's 2 cup holders in the middle, so once more I can get my bottle and pop it in the middle. A storage slot down here where you can pop your smartphone or your wallet or perhaps some other smaller items. A storage compartment underneath the centre armrest, which is pretty generous for space. And of course, last but not least, you do get a glove box, which at first glance looks quite big, but it isn't overly big. It's a fair size, but I wouldn't call it massive. But overall, I think Nissan has done pretty well on the front of the car, so well done, Nissan. So once again, it is time for Ask Aaron, the segment in which you guys get to ask me questions about whichever car I'm testing. Of course, this time around, it is for the brand new Nissan Juke. So let's kick things off. Is it any good? Yes. Is it still a girly type car? Well, I'd argue that's subjective. What I will say though, in my opinion, I think the new car is more aggressive, more striking, and dare I say a bit more masculine, but like I say, that is subjective, a bit difficult to answer. I suppose only you guys at home can really decide that. Right, does it feel fast with just 117 brake horsepower, and is the suspension too soft when driving in a more dynamic way? That's a good question. Now, I'd say for starters, it would be quite a stretch to call this car fast by any means. It's nippy, yes, but fast, no. It does feel nippy enough with that 1 litre engine, particularly once you get past 2000 RPM, so I've got no complaints there. In regard to the suspension, in my opinion at least, I would say the suspension is a bit too soft for dynamic cornering. Now, I know this is not designed to be an out-and-out B-road monster, I appreciate that, but at the same time, through the corners, the suspension, it feels a little bit baggy, a little bit loose. It doesn't feel quite as taut as I'd want it to be. And yes, I know a firmer suspension setup would have an effect on the ride comfort, but personally, I would want this chassis to be a little bit more taut going through the corners, but that's personal opinion. Ride comfort with those wheels, rear space and boot size, also size of the fuel tank, please. Well, ride comfort, I'd say with these 19-inch alloys is so-so. It's not amazing, but I wouldn't say it is particularly disastrous either. Rear space and boot size were covered earlier, of course, and the size of the fuel tank is 46 litres. Right, next question. How much of this badge-engineered Nissan is actually a Renault? Well, to be fair, it shares the same platform, the CMF-B platform, if you want to be pedantic. It shares the same platform as the Renault Captur and the Renault Clio, so this is essentially underneath a Renault Captur in many regards. Also, the engine is also co-developed by Renault. So yes, this may have a Nissan badge on it, but it's kind of half Nissan, half Renault, if that makes sense. Will a GTR engine fit in there? I don't know. I don't think that was really in Nissan's mind when they designed this car, but I'm sure there's someone out there that will find a way of fitting one in, so you never know. What features do you like the best? Good question. I'd say the around view monitor. That's really handy for parking, and I do quite like it. It's quite a snazzy feature. And the last question, would you say that the size of this car versus the 1 litre engine, does it feel underpowered? I think I may have typed that question up incorrectly, but hopefully you get the context of the question. No, I wouldn't say so. I think through normal driving, particularly around town, the 1 litre engine is just fine. However, when you're going uphill, there is a good chance you will need to change down 1 or 2 gears. And I think if the car was fully laden, I think the 1 litre engine would feel a little bit underpowered and a little bit breathless. But for the most part, I think this engine is just fine. Anyway, that's Ask Aaron, done and dusted. See you later. Let's touch upon visibility. Visibility, for the most part, I've got no problems with it. I've got no complaints. I've got no problem seeing through the front. At no point have I had any issues with the A-pillars obstructing my vision at junctions. The wing mirrors are fine. I've got blind spot monitoring as standard as well, just in case I am being a little bit dozy, although I do try to be as observant and as alert as I can. You have to stay alert nowadays. We keep being told to stay alert.
We must stay alert.
So, I'm alert. I hope you're happy, Boris. Anyway, COVID-19 aside, the C-pillars are quite chunky though, so the visibility over the shoulder isn't quite amazing. But I can see no reason why you can't drive this day to day without any issues. Okay, that rear window is a bit small, but as standard, I do have front and rear parking sensors, a reversing camera, and the very useful around view monitor. That is a very handy feature indeed. I'm very happy with this cabin, I must say. Definitely feels more premium than upmarket than I was expecting. So on that front, Nissan, you've done very well. And overall, this isn't a bad car to drive. I know I've had a few criticisms and I've said a few negative things, but to be honest with you, this is not a bad car to drive. It just could be better. I think in a really competitive area of the market, yes, Nissan, you have improved this car. I'm not going to take that away from you, and I take my hat off to the work you've done for the new Juke, but at the same time, it's just not quite as rewarding or pleasing to drive as other cars in its segment. So there we have it, the brand new Nissan Juke. If the old car is anything to go by, I think this car will sell really well. Despite this, I still don't think it's the best car in its class. However, I can't argue with the improvements that Nissan has made. It offers more space inside, it's more practical, it has a nicer interior, and above all, I don't get the urge to bring up my last meal every time I look at it, which is of course an added bonus. Thank you so much for watching this video. I do hope you have enjoyed it. If so, be sure to like, comment and subscribe. If you are subscribed, don't forget to click the bell icon so you get notified every time I make a video. But until the next time guys, be sure to keep up the car obsession.